Ammunition was nearly gone. Medical supplies had run out days ago. German soldiers attacked from north, south, east, and west without stopping. Acting Commander Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe gave his legendary one-word answer when Wehrmacht officers demanded his surrender. Nuts. But every paratrooper in those frozen foxholes knew they were running out of time. Then something appeared at 1650 hours. A Sherman tank burst through the trees south of the town. Cobra King had arrived. 4th Armored Division. Patton's boys. The tank commander linked up with soldiers from the 326th Engineers holding the perimeter. 7 days of hell had finally ended. News spread through every frozen position within minutes. Patton actually made it. But what happened next shocked everyone. The Screaming Eagles refused to act like rescued men. They looked Patton's tankers in the eye and told them something nobody expected. We never needed saving. We had this handled. This is what really happened during those 7 impossible days. The rescue mission that military planners said could never work, and what America's most stubborn fighters actually thought about the men who came to save them. December 18, 1944. The 101st Airborne climbed into open trucks after traveling 100 miles from rest areas in France. These men had been recovering from the nightmare of Operation Market Garden in Holland. Everyone expected easy defensive duty. Nobody expected what waited for them. They rolled into Bastogne just 4 hours before German panzer columns arrived. What happened over the next week became legendary. But those first hours were pure chaos. The German attack that history calls the Battle of the Bulge had started 2 days before. Hitler threw everything he had left at the Americans. More than 200,000 Wehrmacht soldiers. Almost 1,000 tanks. They smashed through American defensive positions that nobody thought needed heavy protection. Allied generals had dismissed the Ardennes as terrible tank country. Hitler proved them wrong. Fog and snow kept Allied aircraft grounded. German columns raced west toward the coast. The entire Western Front threatened to collapse. Bastogne mattered because of its roads. 7 major highways met at this small Belgian town. Control Bastogne, and you control movement through the entire Ardennes region. German commanders needed those roads to keep their offensive moving toward Antwerp. American commanders needed those same roads to bring up reinforcements. Whoever held Bastogne held the key to everything. The 8th Corps Commander General Troy Middleton understood immediately. Bastogne could not fall. Period. When the 101st arrived, nobody knew what was happening. Combat Command B from 10th Armored Division was fighting desperate holding actions east of town. Broken units streamed through Bastogne heading west. Everyone was retreating. German forces approached from every direction, but nobody could say exactly where or how strong. McAuliffe faced an impossible situation. Division Commander Maxwell Taylor was stuck in Washington when the attack began. McAuliffe had to organize a defense using whatever troops he could grab. What McAuliffe built in 24 hours showed why the 101st was elite. He created a circular defensive ring stretching 16 miles around the town. 4 regiments each took a section. Combat Command B became his mobile reserve, ready to plug any hole the Germans punched. The 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion rushed in and positioned their guns covering every likely German approach. But the position had serious problems. The perimeter was too big for the troops available. Gaps existed between units that German infiltrators could exploit. Artillery shells were running low because the division moved so fast that ammunition trucks got left behind. Food would last maybe a week with strict rationing. Medical supplies could handle normal casualties, but would vanish quickly in heavy fighting. Winter gear was scarce, and temperatures kept dropping. Men were already freezing in their foxholes. December 20th changed everything. German forces completed their encirclement. The 26th Volksgrenadier Division attacked from the north. Panzer Lehr pushed from south and east. The famous 2nd Panzer Division bypassed Bastogne entirely, leaving blocking forces while the main column continued racing west. The 101st was now completely surrounded. But something strange happened. The paratroopers barely reacted. They had trained for exactly this situation. Airborne soldiers expected to fight surrounded. They jumped behind enemy lines for a living. Encirclement felt almost normal to them. Strategically dangerous, sure, but tactically familiar. German attacks over the following days pushed the 101st hard. These Wehrmacht units had fought across Europe. They brought tanks and heavy artillery that lightly armed paratroopers struggled to match. Yet every attack failed. Paratroopers destroyed German armor with bazookas and tank destroyers. Forward observers called in artillery with deadly precision. Small units held villages and crossroads with determination that stunned German commanders expecting quick surrender from trapped forces. Psychology mattered as much as tactics during the siege. These soldiers believed completely that they could hold forever if supplies kept coming. They trusted McAuliffe absolutely. His calm confidence spread through every foxhole. Most importantly, these men had enormous pride in their unit. The Screaming Eagles had jumped into Normandy on D-Day. They had fought through the hedgerows. They had jumped into Holland during Market Garden. They were not regular infantry. They were airborne. Airborne soldiers never surrender. Never. December 22nd, 1944. Morning. Something unusual approached American positions south of town. 4 German soldiers walked forward carrying a white flag. They brought a formal surrender demand for the American commander. German timing was deliberate. The encirclement had tightened over 2 days. Weather prevented any supply drops. American ammunition was disappearing fast. German intelligence believed American morale was breaking under constant attacks and brutal cold. The surrender demand was designed to crack American will before German forces had to pay the bloody cost of a final assault. American soldiers blindfolded the German officers and escorted them to the 327th Glider Infantry Command Post. Major Alvin Jones received them. The ultimatum was written in formal English. It stated that powerful German armored forces surrounded Bastogne. Further resistance was pointless. If Americans refused to surrender by a specific deadline, German artillery and Luftwaffe bombers would completely destroy the town. Surrender now and receive honorable treatment as prisoners. Refuse and face annihilation. Jones carried the message to McAuliffe's headquarters. The general had been grabbing a few minutes of sleep. He woke to news that Germans wanted surrender. His response came before he was fully awake. One word: nuts. As McAuliffe cleared his head and staff officers explained the ultimatum details, everyone wondered how to formally respond. The German officers were waiting for a written answer. Some staff suggested a proper military rejection letter. McAuliffe struggled to find the right words. Then Colonel Joseph Harper from the 327th Glider Infantry spoke up. Why not just use nuts? The written response became the most famous military communication of the war. To the German commander, nuts, the American commander. The German officers were completely confused. They could not tell if this was rejection or some American expression they did not understand. American officers escorting them back to German lines clarified helpfully. Nuts means go to hell. If you still do not understand, keep attacking and you will learn what it means soon enough. The nuts response became legendary within hours. Word traveled through every American position in Bastogne. Morale exploded among soldiers who were freezing, starving, and running low on everything. Reporters with the relief forces heard the story and sent it to newspapers across America. McAuliffe's defiance became the symbol of American determination. The response broke every rule of military communication. It was short, direct, full of personality. Everything formal military messages were not. But McAuliffe was not just being theatrical. He knew things the Germans apparently did not. Weather forecasters predicted clear skies within days. Clear skies meant Allied aircraft could finally fly. Air support and supply drops would follow. McAuliffe also knew that General Middleton at the 8th Corps headquarters had sent word that Patton, as Third Army, was already racing north. McAuliffe calculated that if his men held a few more days, relief would arrive before any German final assault could succeed. German reaction was immediate and brutal. Artillery bombardment intensified dramatically, concentrating on the town center where American headquarters and medical facilities were located. Luftwaffe bombers attacked at night, destroying buildings and killing soldiers and Belgian civilians alike. Ground attacks increased pressure, probing the defensive perimeter, searching for weak spots. But the psychological effect backfired completely on the Germans. That defiant rejection told German commanders that American forces in Bastogne were not breaking. These men would fight to the death rather than surrender. This created serious problems for German planning. If Bastogne had to be taken by direct assault, the cost in time and casualties would be enormous. The offensive timetable could not absorb such delays. McAuliffe's stubborn defense was buying time, even while his men fought and froze. December 23rd brought salvation from the sky. Weather cleared exactly as forecasters predicted. American P-47 Thunderbolts appeared over Bastogne within hours, attacking German positions and providing close air support that compensated for dwindling artillery ammunition. C-47 transport planes began dropping supplies by parachute. Ammunition, medical supplies, food, not perfect delivery. Some bundles landed in German territory, but enough reached American lines to keep the defense alive. Meanwhile, something remarkable was happening 100 miles to the south. December 19, 1944, Supreme Commander Dwight Eisenhower called an emergency meeting at Verdun, France. German breakthrough demanded immediate response. The situation looked grim. German forces were racing toward the Meuse River. American units were scattered and sometimes running. The crisis exceeded anything since Normandy. Eisenhower needed a commander who could move fast and hit hard. He needed George Patton. Patton entered that meeting, radiating confidence that made other generals uncomfortable. While everyone else discussed the disaster in worried tones, Patton seemed almost excited. Eisenhower tried to frame the German offensive as opportunity rather than catastrophe. Patton genuinely agreed. German forces had overextended themselves. Aggressive attack into their exposed flanks could turn German breakthrough into German disaster. The critical question was speed. Eisenhower explained the situation. Bastogne was surrounded. Relief was essential. How fast could Patton attack northward? Most commanders in that room believed any serious attack would take weeks to organize. Moving an entire army 90 degrees from its current direction across frozen winter roads while maintaining supply lines seemed impossible. Military doctrine said such operations required extensive planning. Patton's answer shocked everyone. 3 days, 3 divisions. The room went silent. This seemed insane. Third Army was heavily engaged along the Saar River more than 100 miles south, disengaging from current combat, rotating forces completely northward, establishing entirely new supply routes, coordinating attacks across unfamiliar terrain, all in 72 hours. Several generals assumed Patton was showing off again without considering practical reality. But Patton had prepared for exactly this moment. He had studied intelligence reports for weeks indicating German buildup opposite the Ardennes. He had not predicted the exact German attack, but he had recognized the possibility. Patton had ordered his staff to create detailed contingency plans for rapidly shifting Third Army's direction. When crisis arrived, operational orders already existed. They simply needed execution. Leaving Verdun, Patton called his headquarters and spoke 2 words: play ball. This code activated pre-planned orders that put the entire Third Army in motion. The Third Corps under Major General John Milliken would lead the attack toward Bastogne, with 4th Armored Division at the spear point. The 12th Corps, under Major General Patton, would attack on the right flank, providing protection. Within hours, divisions began disengaging. Supply columns started reorienting. Combat units moved north toward attack positions. What happened next became one of the greatest logistical achievements of the entire war. In just over 2 days, Patton relocated more than 130,000 soldiers and 60,000 vehicles an average of 75 miles. 4th Armored Division covered 151 miles from Lorraine to Belgium in 19 hours. This would have been impressive for a peacetime road march. During active combat operations in winter, it was extraordinary. The coordination required to move that many units simultaneously, without creating massive traffic jams or supply breakdowns, was remarkable. December 22nd arrived, exactly 3 days after the Verdun meeting, exactly when Patton promised. The 3rd Corps attacked northward toward Bastogne. 4th Armored Division led, supported by 80th Infantry Division and 26th Infantry Division. German forces were caught completely unprepared. Wehrmacht commanders expected continued American defensive operations. Nobody anticipated such an aggressive counterattack so soon after their own breakthrough had thrown Americans into chaos. The advance toward Bastogne was brutal. This was not the fast armored warfare Patton loved. Winter weather reduced visibility to almost nothing. German forces, though surprised, fought hard from prepared positions. Narrow Ardennes roads prevented flanking maneuvers. American armor had to attack straight ahead into German defenses. Progress came in miles per day, not the dramatic advances that characterized Third Army's summer race across France. But Patton never stopped pushing. When units hit strong resistance, he ordered them to find alternate routes rather than waste lives in frontal assaults. When progress slowed, he personally appeared at forward headquarters demanding renewed attacks. His famous comment that the weather was perfect for killing Germans captured his determination to maintain momentum regardless of conditions other commanders would consider impossible. 4th Armored Division took serious casualties and lost vehicles, but they kept moving forward through sheer willpower. December 26th. After 4 days of continuous fighting, lead elements of 4th Armored Division finally smashed through German lines. Lieutenant Charles Bogus commanded the tank Cobra King. His Sherman crashed through trees south of Bastogne and linked up with soldiers from the 101st Airborne, S-326th Engineers. Time was 1650 hours. The siege had ended. Patton delivered exactly what he promised in exactly the time he specified. What happened when Cobra King reached Bastogne surprised everyone. Patton's tankers expected to find desperate soldiers overwhelmed with gratitude. Instead, they encountered something completely different. The Screaming Eagles made absolutely clear they had not been rescued. They had never needed rescuing. Yes, they had been surrounded, but they had held every position. They had defeated every German attack. Third Army's arrival simply reopened ground supply routes that had been temporarily closed. This was not arrogance or false bravado. The 101st's assessment was militarily accurate. They had defended Bastogne's perimeter successfully for 7 days against determined German attacks. Ammunition was low, but adequate for continued fighting. The December 23rd airdrops had delivered enough supplies to extend their defensive capability. Most importantly, no German attack had breached their lines. Wehrmacht units surrounding Bastogne had suffered heavy casualties without achieving any breakthrough. This attitude reflected the 101st Airborne's fierce pride and elite self-image. These were not ordinary soldiers who held positions until someone rescued them. These were airborne troops trained to fight surrounded. Being encircled was normal for paratroopers. The D-Day comparison was obvious. They had jumped into Normandy behind German lines. They had held against counterattacks. They had eventually linked up with ground forces. Bastogne was the same operation, just without parachutes. When Patton visited Bastogne on December 30th, to present medals and congratulate the garrison, tensions surfaced immediately. Patton praised the defense in his typically dramatic style, calling it one of the war's most brilliant operations. But paratroopers bristled at any implication they had been rescued. They emphasized the Third Army's arrival was appreciated for restoring supply lines, but it was not required for continued defense. Some soldiers claimed they could have held indefinitely. This created friction between Third Army and the 101st that lasted through remaining Bastogne operations. Third Army soldiers had fought through brutal winter conditions and taken significant casualties, breaking the German encirclement. They felt their sacrifice deserved recognition and gratitude. 4th Armored Division particularly resented suggestions their relief operation had been unnecessary. They had lost killed and wounded fighting through German defenses. Their accomplishment deserved respect, not dismissal. The debate over whether the 101st actually needed rescuing entered American military culture and continues today. Third Army veterans and Patton supporters emphasize how desperate the tactical situation was before relief arrived. Ammunition critically low, medical supplies exhausted, German attacks intensifying. Without Third Army's breakthrough, they argue, the 101st would eventually have been forced to surrender or attempt a costly breakout. The 101st's position, maintained by veterans and division historians, was that tactical difficulties did not mean strategic failure. Every defensive operation involves pressure and resource constraints. The real question was whether defense could have continued successfully. The 101st insisted it could. Airdrops, while imperfect, sustained operations. German attacks, while heavy, never breached the perimeter. Division casualties from December 19th through January 6th totaled 341 killed, 1691 wounded, 516 missing. Heavy losses for sure, but not catastrophic for a full division. Truth exists somewhere between these positions. The 101st genuinely defended Bastogne against determined attacks under terrible conditions. This was real military achievement deserving recognition. But siege conditions were not sustainable indefinitely. Ammunition, medical supplies, and food were finite. Airdrops could supplement, but not replace ground supply. German forces kept attacking through late December and January. Third Army as relief ended the siege phase and enabled transition to offensive operations that eventually eliminated the German salient. What nobody disputes is 101st Airborne performance during the siege. The division held vital terrain against superior German forces for 7 days in winter conditions with limited supplies. This defense disrupted German plans and created delays, allowing Allied response. McAuliffe's leadership and paratrooper determination showed American fighting capability at its finest. Whether they technically needed rescuing became beside the point. They held Bastogne when Bastogne needed holding. The siege officially ended December 27th, when ground communications fully reopened and wounded could evacuate to rear hospitals. But fighting continued through January as Americans pushed Germans back towards starting positions. For the 101st, the battle's end marked the beginning of a legend defining division identity for decades. They claimed the nickname Battered Bastards of Bastogne, acknowledging their casualties while emphasizing they never surrendered, never retreated, despite complete encirclement. Patton's relationship with the 101st remained complicated. He genuinely admired their defensive performance and said so publicly many times. On January 14, 1945, he personally awarded McAuliffe the Distinguished Service Cross for his leadership. His ceremony remarks would have been generous from any commander. But Patton also believed and stated that Third Army had rescued the 101st. Characterization paratroopers rejected then and reject now. The Battle of the Bulge was the largest and bloodiest battle American forces fought in World War II. Total American casualties exceeded 76,000, including roughly 19,000 killed. The 101st Bastogne losses of 341 killed, 1691 wounded, and 516 missing were substantial, but represented just a fraction of overall American casualties. Yet Bastogne became the most celebrated American action of the entire battle, partly because of the siege drama, partly because McAuliffe's nuts response captured American imagination. For Third Army, relieving Bastogne validated Patton's methods and cemented his reputation as America's most aggressive combat commander. Pivoting an entire army 90 degrees in 72 hours and attacking through winter terrain against determined resistance was achievement few commanders could match. Eisenhower recognized this. Patton's standing rose despite earlier controversies that nearly ended his career. The rescue debate obscures more important lessons. The German offensive failed because Americans at every level responded effectively to surprise attack. Overrun units kept fighting, disrupting German schedules. Commanders like McAuliffe refused surrender despite encirclement. Senior leaders like Eisenhower and Patton made rapid decisions shifting forces to threatened areas. Flexibility and determination at all levels defeated German plans. Bastogne demonstrated combined arms warfare and service cooperation. Ground defense succeeded partly because of air support when weather cleared. Patton's relief depended on air superiority, preventing Luftwaffe interference. Artillery from both defenders and relief forces created integrated fire plans, defeating German attacks. No single branch won Bastogne. Victory came from integrating all combat capabilities. For the 101st Airborne, Bastogne became the defining experience shaping institutional culture for generations. Siege veterans formed core leadership through Korea, Vietnam, and beyond. Lessons about defensive operations, small unit leadership, and soldier initiative during crisis became foundational principles for new paratroopers. The belief that airborne soldiers never surrender, never retreat, never need rescuing became central to division identity. What the 101st said when Patton broke through represented more than pride or stubbornness. It reflected their understanding that they had accomplished their mission despite extraordinary challenges. They were ordered to hold Bastogne. They held Bastogne. Patton's arrival was welcome, but it was not rescue of forces about to fail. This distinction mattered then. It matters to the 101st today. Bastogne's legacy belongs to both the 101st Airborne and Third Army. Both accomplished remarkable feats under terrible conditions. Paratrooper stubbornness and Patton's aggressive relief represented American military capability at its best. Whether the 101st technically needed rescuing became less important than what both forces achieved together. They defeated Germany's final major Western offensive and hastened the war's end in Europe. The battered bastards of Bastogne and Patton's Third Army each earned their place in American military history. Their combined achievement ensured neither would ever be forgotten.